Hello, my name is Caleb Dean, and this is story time. Every every time that me and my daddy would go down to Reform, Alabama, we'd go see my great grandfather, Wilvie Dean. Wilvie is my great grandfather. That's my daddy's daddy, Wilvie. Wilvie Dean stood 4 foot and 10 inches high from the ground. He was a short man. He had a temper twice as long as he was short. But anyway, back to the story. Every time we'd go see Wilvie, he would always want to tell us a story. He'd be like, "Boys, have I ever told y'all the story about the time I was in Italy fighting against the Germans?" And we'd say, "No, Paw-Paw, you've never told us that story." So he would proceed or commence to telling the story. He'd say, "Boys, I was over in Italy back in World War II fighting the Germans. It was 1943. And I was on. We all took turns having set up through the night for the night duty. And it just so happened that it was my week to do it. It was my responsibility. It was up to me. And so I was up one night, and I was walking backwards and forwards, pacing. It was all I could do to stay awake. It was a real boring night. And out of nowhere, I heard this German. He attacked me. So I took off a stumbling and a fumbling and a running, and by that I ran right off in a creek. That creek was over my head. So what I had to do is I just sunk down to the very bottom of that creek. When I reached the bottom, I'd plant both feet, bend both knees slightly, and plunge up to the top. Just barely clearing my head above the water. And I'd reach, and I'd grab a breath of air. There it is. And it'd sink back down to the bottom. I'd wait. It took me a minute. He didn't weigh much. He probably didn't weigh 92 pounds or something. But anyway, so when he finally reached the bottom, he'd do the same again. Plant both feet. Bend both knees slightly. Plunge up to the top. His head just barely get to the bottom of the water and hit gravel iron and sink back down to the bottom. Whole time now, Germany's shooting at him. Bang! Bang, 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 bang. And he done this, Paw-Paw said, for, oh Lord, 3 or 4 minutes. He done this. Jumping up and grabbing water. Bang, bang, bang. Sinking back down to the bottom. And he said he got to noticing he had jumped 2 or 3 times and there wasn't no shooting. Something had to have happened to the German. Might have ran out of bullets. He didn't know. Out of nowhere, here come a splash right in the water. If somebody had jumped in there, this man swam up to him and he grabbed him. He took his hands and he grabbed my Paw-Paw Wilvie. He didn't know his name, but he pulled him out of the water up to the bank. What it was is an Italian, and an old Italian feller. He heard the commotion, I reckon, and he come out there and he saw what was happening, and he killed that German, and he jumped in that water, looking just like a dang meatloaf. He jumped in that water, little Italian fella did, and saved my Paw-Paw's life. So he drug him out, and he got him up on the bank there, and he started speaking Italian to him, and Paw-Paw didn't know what he was saying, but he thanked him in English. Cause that little meatloaf-looking Italian fella saved Wilvie's life. And every time we go see Wilvie, he'll tell that story. My Paw-Paw Wilvie, I'm sure he still says his prayers at night. Thanks, Lord, for sending that Italian fella. Wilvie is he's still alive. He's 94 years old. He lives in Reform, Alabama, down there in Pickens County, South Alabama. He lives in a nursing home down there. He's drying up. He's getting shorter and shorter. He get where he don't eat much, don't weigh much, but he's still alive, barely. And I love my Paw-Paw Wilvie. But if it wasn't for that Italian that day, my Paw-Paw may have been dead. But like I said, that's Paw-Paw Wilvie's story about the time he was in Italy fighting the Germans. I've heard that story many times. And every time I hear it, it gets a little better. And I appreciate each and every person that's listened to my story or Paw-Paw Wilvie's story. I give him all the credit, Paw-Paw Wilvie. It's his story. But till next time, this is Caleb Dean with Story Time, telling a story of Paw-Paw Wilvie. Bye-bye now. Next week, we'll have our story time with Caleb Dean. I'll tell the story about the time I went to the McDonald's in Vernon and ordered a sundae.